welcome, Tunde. It's great to have you on.
Pleasure.
Yeah, and I know you've been on in the past. You were on in December as an attendee, not a guest, but you kind of have a vibe for the format, so to speak. You've got a very um, exciting background. I can't wait to hear some stories and get to ask you some questions because it's awesome. And Katie's shared some stuff on how she knows you, and like I was looking forward to this interview all day. So maybe we could just jump right into it, and you can give people a little bit of an idea of your background, not just in business, but
Take it way back.
who are you? Yeah, as far back as you want to go, like
Way back.
go to the Wayback Machine.
Let's see. Well, my parents are both from Nigeria. So I was a son of immigrants. I'm first generation here. I was born in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio. My parents came to the US to go to school. My dad is an academic. He would still be in school if it was allowed. But he wanted to be a professor. His dream job was to be a professor, but he wanted a more stable environment and job for his kids. So he settled on being a particle physicist at Fermilab here in Chicago. So he's still doing that actually today. They're still in Naperville. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. My mom works in IT, and I have an older, if you know anything about immigrant families, especially from Nigeria, education is really big. It's a huge deal. Not in our family really, but in many families, there's a lot of pressure to, you're gonna be a doctor, you be an engineer, you be a lawyer, be something like, one of the high reputation professions. But my parents were actually pretty cool about what we wanted to do. As long as you get your undergrad, you can do whatever you want to do. Is what my dad used to always say. He would call it your meal ticket. You get your meal ticket and you can do whatever you want to do. I was interested in computers. I liked playing video games. I wanted to build computers, and I was kind of a nerd in that sense. But I was also really good at football, and I liked playing football. And I wanted to do both. How can I play football and at the highest level possible, but how could I also go to school at the highest level possible? My parents actually were, especially my mom, were very against me playing football for a long time until the school started coming to my high school and for interviews, like, oh, we want to talk to Tunde. And it was, I think it was like Harvard came through my school, and that was when like the switch flipped. My mom was like, Harvard came to visit, and then all of a sudden my parents are huge football fans. This is not an exaggeration. They are huge football fans. To this day, my parents are bigger football fans than I am. I don't even play anymore. But they fell in love with it at that point. So I ended up going to Stanford, which I do think is the best place in the world to go to school at a high level and be an athlete. Biased opinion, but I think it's true. And I was an electrical engineer there, and it was, in hindsight, I think I did probably miss an opportunity or two, because I was in the Bay Area at Stanford, 2001 to 2005, and totally wasn't paying attention to everything else that was going on. I was so focused on football and my own studies, and I have more than a handful of classmates who are Facebook retired and Google retired, and one of my friends in one of my classes, he founded Gusto. Like, there's all these people who were like, did amazing things. And I was very like, football, they focused. I could have just maybe bought a domain name or something. I might have cashed it on that. Who knows? But I was really into sports and academics, and I still feel like it's my greatest achievement. One of my greatest achievements being able to play football at a high level and actually graduate with a degree in electrical engineering from Stanford. It was not for the faint of heart. Went into the draft, projected to be a third round pick in the draft. Made the mistake of watching the entire show. from start to finish. It's not great television anyway, but I was And it's even worse when you're waiting to hear your own name. Um, it was it was a huge mistake. So of course, the draft is very much, it's kind of like a market in a sense. And so if there are runs on certain commodities in the market, then people start grasping for straws. And if you're not one of those, then you get bumped back a little bit more, and so on and so on. And so yeah, there was a run on offensive lineman that year of which I was not one. And so I kept waiting to hear my name. It dropped, it dropped, it dropped. Was finally drafted, pick 181 in the 6th round, by the Cleveland Browns. And so I went to the Browns, was there for a year and a half, one season full, was released at the second training camp. Played with the Browns. I was with the Bears for some time. That was actually when I met Dez. Played with the Bears the year after the Super Bowl. So I missed all the fun of the Super Bowl. And then I was with them for that season. I was with the Eagles for a season. I was all over the place. The thing I always tell people is I played for 6 teams in 4 years, which gives you insight into how well it went. Normally, that's not the typical road if you're really balling out in the way that you expected. But the football is, I don't regret it. I mean, I miss being in shape, but that's about all I miss of it. It was good, but I was really glad to move on after it was done. And I can say that now. Yes, there was a 6th round pick that turned out okay. I hear that a lot, actually, when I say I was drafted in the 6th round, and people are like, oh, like Tom Brady. It's like, yes, but no. Actually, funny story. The Browns that year, they had the 12th pick in the draft. And they traded the 12th pick in the draft. They traded down from 12 to 14. In the process of trading down, they picked up an additional pick, a 6th-round pick, that they used to draft me. So they drafted me with that 6th-round pick. With the 14th pick, they took Cameron Wembley, who is a great player. He's a good player. He played for 10 years in the NFL. But the 12th pick that they missed out on was Haloti Ngata, who was like one of the biggest, best defensive linemen in the past 20 years that's ever played the game. And so to this day, I get flack from Browns fans on Twitter, like calling me out, like, we could have had Haloti Ngata. Instead, we had this guy. And I was like, I had nothing to do with that pick. I'm sorry. Like, people should remember that if your team makes a dumb draft pick, it's not the guy's fault. They're just trying to make it. But yeah, so I finished playing football, retired from football. And it was right at the end of 2009, beginning of 2010, moved back to Chicago. And I was 27 years old and retired. And the best thing that you're supposed to do was in the rearview mirror. And so I was trying to figure out what to do. While I was playing football, I actually started developing websites, honestly. It's kind of crazy, but I had an electrical engineering degree. I took one class at Stanford on, all the technologies and codes you need to build websites and do front-end software development. And so I just literally in an off season, I was in Chicago and looking for something to do, and kind of really not feeling very fulfilled. I had a lot of time, and I went to the team chaplain of the Bears, this gigantic man named Harry Swain. He's really awesome. And he said, oh, we should go and check out this group, GRIP Outreach for Youth. It's a group that does outreach to at-risk kids in the city. That's where I met Katie. And I went and visited, and they said, hey, what do you need? I loved what they were doing. They said a number of things, because nonprofits often need a number of things. And one of them, they said, well, we need a new website. I said, oh, I could do that for you, which was not completely true, honestly, when I look back on it, because I knew technically how to do that, but I had never done it before. But I just wanted to help out. So among all the things I did for them, I said, I could build you a website, I could get that done. And this was way before like Squarespace, when you could just like create a website in 5 minutes, just like, and it's done. So I actually spent, while I was playing with the Bears, I would finish practice and drive into the city. I lived up in Lake Forest, but I would drive into the city like 45 minutes and work with this nonprofit on building their website and hang out with kids and like do whatever and then drive back. I was single at the time, so it was easy to like spend all your time doing that. And but what that was is it was the first time I had ever worked. I worked with a major organization building something for them. So I just started doing it in my off-season time, finding people who needed websites, web development. I just kept doing it because I had free time, doing it for free, doing it for super cheap, but it was something to do, a skill to build while I was playing football. So when I retired from football, put my resume together, I had like a dozen or so projects, a portfolio of projects that I had done. I had my Stanford degree in electrical engineering, and I'm an NFL alumni. I played 4 years in the league. And so I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I just started sending my resume out to find a spot to land in. I'll work for a little bit while I figure out what I really want to do. And the company that I started working for, they thought my resume was a joke. They actually called me to confirm, like, this can't be real. Why would he be? Because now that I'm telling the story, it sounds super ridiculous, because they posted something on Craigslist looking for someone to help them like build out. They're looking for a developer, a front-end software developer. And I said, oh, I can help you out, send it in. And the guy called me, he called me like 30 minutes later, like, yeah, I just wanted to talk about and I'm like, yeah, it's me. We talked, and I had the job really quickly. And I was there for 7 years. It was a startup here in Chicago called NCSA Sports. They help high school athletes to connect with college coaches. It's almost like Match.com for college coaches and high school athletes. There's a lot of education for the families, and it's a great mission. It was in sports, and I could go work there and not have to put on a suit and tie or something like that. That was really what I was thinking about. But it was a great environment professionally because it was my first job, technically. I mean, football is work and it is a job, but it's not normal. And it's not normal. So it was my first normal job, was working for this company. I stayed there for a long time, but I did have this entrepreneurial bug. I wanted to start companies. I had that when I was a kid. This is a true story. I had a babysitting business when I was a kid. If you can imagine, like someone like me babysitting kids in this, Naperville suburb. I did it because it's the only way we could get money, because we didn't have allowances or anything like that. So really just, I had an entrepreneurial bug. That was the reason I even started making websites, because I wanted to do something. And so I started a company with some friends, and it failed terribly. It was like a faceplant, total faceplant. And I had no idea why, because it felt like it was a good idea. It felt like we had a good audience. We thought it was a good cause that would drive people to it, but it face planted, and I really wanted to know why, and I couldn't quite figure it out. And that was really the impetus for me to go to business school. I wanted to learn more about it. It was driving me crazy because I had spent a good amount of money trying to get it off the ground, and time, and then for something to just not work out and just be like, I don't know why, it wasn't enough. And so that's really what drove me to business school. And I did have some really good mentorship, some people who were helping me along that process and to think about it. Because at first I was going to go to an online school, online business school. The NFL they still do. They offer a free MBA from the University of Indiana online if you want to go do it. So I'll just go do that. And I had some really great mentors who basically said, you don't need an MBA on your resume. You need to work with people. You need to talk and build a network of people. So it's not the technical stuff you need to know, it's you need to work with people. And so that was a really, really great advice, especially in hindsight. So I went to the University of Chicago, a Booth School of Business, focusing on finance and entrepreneurship and strategy. And my thought was, entering in, I'm going to start a company, actually know what I'm doing. It's going to be wildly successful. And then afterwards, I'll be an investor and invest in companies. That was my awesome plan, which didn't go that way. Like many plans from for people, it didn't quite go that way. I did start a company. And again, it was a great idea. It wasn't a bad idea. The one from before, the first failed idea, in hindsight, was actually not a great idea. It wasn't fully thought out, right? Hope is not a strategy. Like, we hope this will work out in these ways. It's the wrong mindset. But the company we started in school, my wife and I actually worked on it, is a company focused on helping women postpartum. We have 3 children. We have some experience with postpartum. We have a great network here in Chicago, and felt that we were perfectly positioned to have support after our kids were born. But it's a much different animal getting that support, asking for that support after you actually had a child. And so we were really perplexed as to why that was, because we have family in Chicago, friends in Chicago, loved ones in Chicago, but it still was hard. And so we thought about a business that would help activate people's networks, their friends, their family, and community, to take care of moms postpartum specifically. And in some ways, we were just at the start of what was a huge trend, which is literally recognizing that the postpartum period is really challenging for women, and that they need more than one visit 6 weeks afterwards. I won't get on a soapbox for you for that one, but the thing, in hindsight, we were not the right people to start that company, right? Like, we had a great idea, we had some pieces put together, but I'm not a healthcare person. I was not a healthcare person, and so we would have had to bring other people in to help with that. But that things kind of shifted from there. What did happen in business school, though, was that I had an amazing professor who was a mentor also, who he pulled me aside after class one day. He said, you should be an investor now. He knew my story. He had known like what I was interested in. He said, you should do this. Like, you should go for it. And in my own mind, I had actually kind of disqualified myself. I had thought, well, I'm not the traditional kind of investor that people think about. I didn't work at a bank. I didn't work as a consultant. I was in a software development team at a startup, and then I played football. It's more tech focused, not finance focused. I had some people prior to business school say like, hey, don't tell them you want to be an investor on your application because you don't have that background. Like, it'll jade your application, this and the other. So I had thought, look, this isn't for me, but maybe it will be if I can be a successful entrepreneur first. Then like, I'll at least have that credibility to bring to the table. This professor basically said, your resume is great, right? As it is right now, just go do it. Just go do it. And so I did. I literally, it was halfway through business school, 2 years, halfway through the program. I just started, and I'm telling a super long story. I just realized that I don't know what the schedule is.
Oh, you're good. You're perfect. This is great. Just keep talking. I could listen to this all day.
Stories, and my stories sometimes are long, winding roads. So I, midway through business school, shifted gears. So remind you, we had started a company, and that company was like, we were working on that. While working on that, started applying to like entry-level VC associate investing positions. Just like, let me just do this then, right? And just telling them full on, like, I had taken some coursework at Booth that would help me to do the job, but very entry level. I wasn't expecting like, sometimes, if we're honest, MBA folk can be kind of entitled. Like, I got an MBA, so like, give me a job, or like, give me like a better job than I deserve, kind of thing. I was not that. I was like, look, I recognize like I'm still learning. I just want to get in and learn with my hands, learn by doing. And so I applied to a ton of places and heard a lot of no's. I applied to one place for it was a junior role. I said, hey, I'd love to do it. They actually got back to me and said, we would like, actually, it was really interesting. They sent me a reply. They said, you are too senior for this role. Like, we can't hire you to this role, but we'd like to work with you. Why don't you intern for us? I said, great. And they said, well, can you intern through the school? The school had a program for VC interns. I said, and which is great because it's cheaper than like interning directly and all that stuff. But I said, sure. So I actually kind of backdoored into the school's venture intern program and worked with this company. It was really at that point that I realized that I actually have an interest in healthcare. I didn't think I was interested in healthcare up until that point. In fact, I thought it was the opposite. Healthcare to me at the time was, the hospital, the health system, hospitals, your doctor, like devices, medical devices, like that's healthcare. What I was interested in was actually keeping people healthy without having to use all those things. Like how can a mom be healthy at home? How can our senior loved ones be healthy without having to go see the internist, 3 times a month? Right? How can people be well with the resources that are available to them in their community without having to access the health system directly? That was what I was interested in, and it was really at that internship. People would say, "Oh, well, like, how long have you been interested in healthcare?" I said, "I'm not really interested in healthcare." Like, well, what are you interested in? I would tell them, like, that's healthcare, actually. So much of this story feels accidental, but it was actually like really the best possible way to learn about all these things. And so I interned for the company and it was great. I graduated from business school in June of 2019 and did not have a job, which is like the thing that all these business school folks are so scared of. You go to business school and you need a job and you graduate, you don't have one, and people are like offering you condolences. Oh, I'm so sorry. Like you'll figure things out. And I'm not worried. I mean, we were gonna launch a startup, which definitely doesn't guarantee you're gonna make any money. And I think the other thing that I didn't really highlight is that I was able to attend Booth for free. The NFL gave us half the scholarship, and then I earned a scholarship from Booth. So basically, it was for free, quote unquote. I mean, I wasn't making any money, I had no income, but tuition and the cost of attending was covered to like down to the nickel, which was definitely providence, but we're grateful for it. And so I didn't have a job afterwards, and I went back to the place that I interned. I said, "Hey, can I just hang out and help with whatever?" And they said, sure. So I went back and just helped them they were starting a company in basically to help seniors, again, a company to help seniors and to take advantage of some new legislation and Medicare Advantage. And so I helped them do some competitive analysis and I spent a lot of time by myself in their office building. I would show up and no one would be there. And I'd be like, oh, I'm here. And, did have a few moments where I, questioning my life choices, because at this time also we were pregnant with our third baby. And here I was, much older than the typical MBA graduate. I don't feel like I'm super old, but I'm 38 now. I was 30. That's how you know you're getting old, is you can't remember how old you were or how old you are. But I was 36, I believe, at the time. And it was like, I'm 36. I am sitting in an office building by myself. My wife is pregnant and I'm not making any money. What are you doing? Kind of thing. Had a few of those moments, but again, one of the people at that company, the CFO of that company, was also a Booth grad. And he basically said, look, I can't have you coming in here and working for free. Like, I'm not going to be the guy that does that. So they hired me to a small contract position, and I did help them do diligence on a company. The company was called Bowie Health, which is now a much larger company than it was 2 years ago. But they were doing virtual front door triage. So it's one of those paradigms where it might be coming to a hospital near you fairly soon, where you try to schedule an appointment with the doctor, you get to the hospital, they're like, great, talk to this chatbot first, talk to this system first, and they're asking you questions about all the intake questions that you would normally answer if you were seeing your doctor, automating that part and then directing you to the right place. It's just so that people stay out of the ER and you can go to the right place quicker. It's more efficient for hospitals, it's more efficient for health plans, and it's more efficient for people. Again, this is pre-pandemic, so at the time there were still people who were questioning whether, like, this is cool, but are people really going to do this virtually? It's like, well, wait a year. But I did diligence on this company, and they decided not to invest, but I put on my resume and said, hey, I worked for this place, and it was a resume bullet. I did diligence on a $5 million investment, and then here's what I did. And that summer, by the way, I was applying to all kinds of places and hearing all kinds of no's. No, 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 no. I had one wonderful man say yes to an interview, and I do all my preparation for the interview. I get on the phone, ready for the interview, prepped and ready. And he says, hey, I just want you to know that you're not a fit for our role, but I remembered your name from Stanford. I just wanted to talk to you. And I was like, you could have told me that, a week ago, and I'd have talked to you. You didn't have to have me come through this interview to have a phone call. So a lot of frustrating things, but really at just the right place at the right time. Starting that company at Booth, I had been doing a lot of research. So I was going out and talking to people about, how do you get stuff reimbursed by insurance? Like if there's a service and you want it to be reimbursed, how does that happen? And I had a conversation with a man who worked at the company that I work at now, Sandbox Industries, a connection through a classmate. And we had a really great conversation. I was not, job hunting at that time. I was building a business. I was building a startup. And so he posted on LinkedIn a role at Sandbox Industries, which is a healthcare venture firm that's partnered very deeply with Blue Cross Blue Shield. It's actually not a healthcare venture firm. It's a venture firm with several verticals, and one of them is healthcare. And so I saw the job and I said, hey, I know you. Like we had a conversation last March. I'm interested. And because of that conversation, a lot of those intro things that are hard about, hiring someone, everything, it was like water at that point. He said, oh yeah, I remember our conversation. Like, must skirt you through the first run of vetting. And so then I was having conversations with the rest of the team, and it was really a week and a half or so later, got hired there. So I've been working at Sandbox since the end of 2019, and it was kind of a whirlwind because I started working. We were at a really awesome office building in the West Loop. I was there for about a month, then we had our son. I was out for 3 or 4 weeks, and then it was Christmas time, and so I was out for Christmas break. I came back, we worked for 2 months, the pandemic hit, and then we were at home. And so a lot has happened in the past, 12 to 14 months in everyone's life, but it's been a really crazy journey in being in healthcare during that time, being in digital health and working with health plans and seeing what's important to them during this time too. So I've learned a ton in that time. So that took 35 minutes, but that's my story. There you go.
No, it was awesome. Thank you so much. Very, very great background. I could listen to you talk all day, the way you're describing everything, and kind of like what you called like an accidental, like you found yourself, like you were looking for what is going to get you up and get you going. And like the way you got there was amazing. So it was great to listen to. I always encourage people to chat, like type in the chat if they have questions, so that people can start thinking of questions. I had a few while you were talking. You said something about when you're at Stanford, you were heads down playing football. and you felt like you were missing out, or looking back like you felt like you missed out. And we have we have two venture capital funds here at Regiment, and the anti-portfolio, some people call it, like the ones you passed on. It sounds like you did diligence on a company and they didn't invest, but you kind of used that to your advantage. Do you think that there is a missing out, or is there a reason that you didn't get in? I'd be curious to get your feelings about like that in the venture world. What is like missing out? Is that motivate you? Does that?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think there's a few different tiers, right? There's personally, there's professionally, and then there's professionally specifically in venture. And I think personally, in everyone's life journey, I don't think there are accidents. I wouldn't say that, like, I mean, my life would look completely different had I made different choices or had things gone the way that I wanted them to go at the time. But I'm happy with how they are now, and I don't think that's an accident necessarily. But I would say that in venture, the the FOMO effect and that missing out, I think it should be much less of a driving factor. And it kind of has to be. And I think the parallel to that is in sports. When you play sports, if you're an athlete at any kind of accelerated level, you're going to have to put yourself on the line and you're going to make mistakes. And then you have to forget about them. Like, you have to be really gracious with yourself and then just go on to the next one, being confident in the fact that there will be a next one and that you can do it. And in venture, like, if you keep second guessing and saying like, oh, well, we should have done that deal, then the next time you come across something, your judgment is going to be jaded. You'll start thinking about, well, we missed out on the last one, so we got to get this one, when this one is completely isolated from that last one. And so it doesn't quite work. And so really, for fear of missing out, I think their judgment is compromised. You can often make worse decisions because of that fear. But I would pair that with learning from your mistakes. At Sandbox, we have a pretty robust set of principles that we invest by. And all of those principles have come through sometimes very painful mistakes that have been made. And so it's something you put a signpost on the ground and say, we made a huge mistake last time. Let's think about this going forward, so we can refer to the principle that we learned from our last mistake now and going forward. And that's, I think, a different mindset. And, we always talk about, there's no, you don't worry about a missed deal. I think in some ways the hallmark of a successful investor is that you can point to the deals you missed. You can point to the things like, we missed out on this, this, and this. I mean, in talking with our team, we had a chance to look at several really huge, now very huge healthcare companies when they were in their infant stages. And there are really great reasons why those deals didn't get done. And those companies grew to be tremendous. Companies like Livongo and Teladoc, companies like Oak Street Health, companies that are like a big deal now when they were much smaller, and like, hey, you can be a part of this, and very valid reasons why it wasn't something that we pursued. And so that's kind of the nature of the business in a sense.
Yeah, no, I love it. Yeah, the FOMO is an emotional state of mind for sure. And, I've learned that anytime you let emotion affect the decision-making process in the investment world, it usually doesn't end well. So I like that answer. I did write it down. You kind of addressed it in answering that question, but the failure, and just hearing you talk, so eloquently about failure. How important do you think it is to talk about failure and being an entrepreneur or being a family man, like that acceptance, like you said, and Phil made a chat comment, short memory and fresh eyes on the new deal, like talking about failure, how important do you think that is to companies or your kids? Like, I'd be curious to get your opinion on that.
I think, getting slightly philosophical on my faith is very important to me. I'm a Christian. It's something that finds its way into everything that I do. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is, you give your testimony, you talk about like your story and like what happened and how you got here and those kinds of things. And something about someone, anyone really, is if you can't talk about it, then you're not really done with it. Then it's still a problem for you. So if you failed at something and you can't really talk about it, then like you're still failing. It's still happening. It's still messing with you. And so in a sense, like, and we do see this in our kids too, and it's something that happens professionally. If a failure is something that still eats you up and it's still like, oh, I can't talk about it because then people will know the mistake that I made, or then it'll like hang over me kind of thing. And like, then haven't really completely learned everything from that failure that you can. And so I think talking about failures is really healthy. It's really healthy because, especially once you're able to talk about it and share with other people what you've learned about it, then you're accessing that learning is now like relevant for you. Like you can get the value out of what was a complete and total failure, even if it is kind of embarrassing or you wish it didn't happen. Like, yes, I totally wish that I didn't spend time and energy trying to start a business and for that to be the thing that caused me to go to business school. I've had people tell me I should go to business school before that. I had lots of people actually tell me I should go to business school before that, but I reasoned it away. Like, I got kids now. We just bought a house. It'll be time intensive. I got a good job, but I reasoned things away. And it wasn't until I fell on my face, doing this thing, that it was like something that drove me. So yes, I would have loved to not have to have done that to learn. But now that I have learned from that, like it's something that I can talk about the mistake that I made, but also I like the benefit of that I get to experience because it's something that I can share. And then when you can share about it, then that goes forward. Now everyone else can learn from my mistake. It's maybe a principle that someone can incorporate into their own life, that hope is not a strategy. And that if you're going to actually start a company, like you can't just believe, although belief is important, like you have to have data to show like who's going to actually pay for this, those kinds of things.
I could sit and listen to you talk all day, and I feel like we should start Tuesdays with Tunde on Clever Conversations. If you would do it, I could listen to this because it's so true. It's like almost like what you're explaining. It sounds like a therapy, like therapeutic, like your self therapy of like, I messed this up. It's okay. I'm going to get over it. Look at how you fix it and just get it out and go make some new mistakes. So yeah. I love that you got philosophical there. Because it's good stuff, and just knowing that, and you can tell like it's helping. You seem happy, you seem healthy, you seem like you accept and embrace failure, you're moving forward. Like, how much has that helped you, or that mindset, when you're looking at companies as a venture capitalist? Does that play a role in your decision making process? Like when you meet a C-suite, like a CFO or a CEO, like how much are you getting philosophical in that investment thesis at the VC? I'd be curious.
Well, I think at a VC level, there's first, I went to the Chicago booth, right? So data is everything, right? This is data. And so like, you want to get data, like you can't just like, the philosophical part, if you will, really centers around the information that you have. But if we're honest, right, in venture, you're going to get to a point where you have all the data that you're going to possibly have. You can't get any more. You can't get any more proof points. It's kind of like punting. It's kind of cheating to be like, well, we don't have enough data to make this decision. Let's wait, right? Okay, that's true. But at some point, you are going to have to take a risk. Now, the risks, I think, contrary to maybe what some popular voices say, like, investors don't like risk, right? And I think also like even entrepreneurs who are successful don't like risk. They're willing to take risks, but I did read an article recently that talked about some of the most successful entrepreneurs and how very risk averse they were, and how it wasn't risk for them. It was more like being a predator than it was like taking a risk. It was waiting for the right opportunity and then like eating everything that there was, right? But I think the thing you get to a point where there's no more data that I can get, and then you have to make a judgment. And that judgment is going to come off of principles that you have internalized. And in a lot of places in VC, especially if you're earlier stage, those judgments are going to be character judgments. They're going to be judgments about people. Is this the right person to do this right now? And the data you have is what that person's done in the past and their interactions with you, right? That's not hard data. That's not like concrete, like they scored XYZ on a test. It's a character judgment. And so really then when you're thinking about what investing ends up being, especially at the early stage over a long period of time, it's more like a partnership. It's much more like a marriage than it is like a contractual agreement or a simple like business agreement. We're going to be working with this person for the next 7 years. Like, can we? If we ask them to do things, will they? If we give constructive feedback, will they take it? Like, there's more like personal, relational things, and that's what I think. Like, maybe a softer. I mean, that all those things are data points, but it's not as hard, right? It's not as scientific. It is much more. It's much more emotional and emotive than I think people realize, especially when there's not like, hey, you know, the company's got 10 million in revenue and like, here's what we can bring XYZ. It's like, you know, we were actually talking to someone today, and it's like they don't have any customers yet. They've got a great idea and have had some experience in that area in the past, but like it's more about the person and their mindset and their vision. And do we want to go on the journey with, that's a phrase we say often. Do we want to go on the journey with this person? That's not a hard data decision, right? That's more like, how do I feel about this person? And sometimes it can come down to little things, right? Like, I know if there's a CEO that you get in a meeting with the CEO and all of their employees, but they don't want to let their employees talk, right? Like, it's like, okay, data point, right? Or you get a CEO that's like comfortable with saying, you know, my COO knows much more about this than I do. I'm gonna let them describe it to you, right? Like little things that tell you stuff about people's character and stuff like that. I think that's really big too. So there's an element of judgment based off of hard data, but I think there is a big element of, for lack of a better word, how you feel about things. And so that can be refined in a lot of different ways.
The math professors at Booth are getting like all riled up as you speak. No, but it's good to hear. I feel the same way. Like, be a good person, and you know, put good out into the world, and good comes back. And like you said, there's no way to measure that, like, or get data points on that. And yeah, no, it's really interesting. And again, a reminder to our faithful Clever Conversations audience: if you guys have any questions, feel free to type into the chat, or you can turn your camera and microphone on and do it that way. While we wait, here we go. We are Brady Bunch style, and we'd love to hear you ask questions. There you go. Yes, we are. Like Hollywood Squares. So while we're waiting for somebody to ask a question, I'll ask another one. So you'd mentioned the company that's doing the mobile triage. And, you know, I launched a venture fund. Our company launched a venture fund like right when COVID hit. We were like, oh my gosh, this is going to change the world. And to your point with data points, everything started over. There are no more data points. It's like nothing that we had in data points exists again, because it was all pre-COVID. When 85% of the world shut down, the data points of like, this is how we used to do venture, I felt was like, doesn't matter. Every venture firm right now is starting at data point 0, and we're all growing up again. It's kind of how I looked at it. How much did COVID affect how you looked at companies, or the diligence process, or just the industry of what you're investing in? Was there little effect, big impact? I'm curious.
So I think one of the biggest changes was all of a sudden people got comfortable with giving people large sums of money without having met them in person. And that changed, I think that paradigm in terms of how we actually do business. I think that's one of the biggest things when you don't have to bring people into the office, you don't have to go to the board meeting or go to the city to meet the entrepreneur before the deal gets done. Um, so what we experienced, I think, is similar to what's happened in maybe parallel industries like banking, in that we started working from home remotely, and it actually was pretty smooth, especially if you have a good team and you've got a really strong established culture beforehand. You could start working from home and it's going really smooth, and so there actually was way more stuff to do than there was before, because things were going quicker. And then that paralleled with what is maybe kind of sort of a digital health bubble, where there's a lot of activity, and deals are getting done really fast, and all you have to have is a great idea and a tiny bit of traction, and it's like, we're raising $50 million valuation, right? It's like, well, okay. But so I think we adjusted really quickly, and there was a lot of activity. So that changed. That was a big change, right? I was at the start of 2020, I was expecting to be traveling. I got my passport situated correctly, got my TSA pre-check. When we go on all these board meetings and meeting all these people all over the nation, and then it was like, no, but I am meeting a lot of people. It's just here in the same place, just like everyone else, right? And so that was probably the biggest change, I would say, to our process. But like everyone, like the digital health explosion, I think is one that's been said. A lot has been said about that, about telehealth and digital health and virtual health, and how all of those things are actually different things. But it's here to stay, not in the same way as it was last year, but prior in 2019, virtual health engagement was at 2%, maybe 3%. And then in April, it was 60%. And now it's maybe like 10%. So it's leveled back down. So it's not replacing, right? Like a virtual visit will never, I don't think we're there yet where it's going to completely replace going to see your doctor. And for some people, especially those who are elderly or those with chronic conditions, going to see your doctor is a huge social component. It's a part of your health, getting up and out of your house. So we're not just trying to replace everything, but now digital health usage is 200-300% more than it was a year and a half ago, and that's here to stay, right? And so that's changed. And a lot has also been said about how the digital adoption has compressed in the past year, compressed what would have taken 10 years into 12 months, right? And so now everyone's mom and dad and grandma is totally cool Zoom calling and totally cool doing that with their doctor. And that changes things, right? Especially if you are a health plan and you have people who are in Illinois and your members are in Illinois, but they really want to talk to a doctor who's in Florida. Like, who pays for that? Does the Florida health plan pay for that? This is maybe a more Blue Cross Blue Shield problem. Does the Florida problem? Who pays? Who pays for everything, right? And figuring that out is a big deal too. So there have been a lot of changes, I think, in the digital health realm, but then in just how people do business. Like, this conversation doesn't happen really apart from COVID, right? Like, not in the same way, like, so that part has been interesting, and I think it will stick around.
Yeah, very cool. Looks like Katie is either trying to high five you or she's got her hand up to ask a question. There you go.
Probably both. You mentioned that Harvard came and you ended up going to Stanford. Did you look at any non-Ivy League schools by chance, or is that really the bar that?
Yeah. I took official football visits to Stanford, the University of Illinois, Wisconsin, Georgia Tech, and Northwestern. But had strong interest from Purdue as well, from Minnesota, from UCLA, and from the University of Florida. But I think hopefully there's no Michigan folks on the call here. But I grew up like a really strong like Buckeye fan. I mean, I was born in Columbus. My dad went to Ohio State, and I was like, I'm going to go to Ohio State. That was my goal. And then I like along the way got super nerdy and was like, I want to build computers. And so I looked at a lot of schools that were not Ivy League schools. I think had I not cared about anything and just wanted to play football, I probably would have gone to Wisconsin, to be honest with you. That was but
man, that's
you know,
Cavs.
wanted to do both.
Yep. Would have been cool to have you as a Badger. I'm a Badger. Even though I've been in Illinois for 25 years now, I still refer to myself as a Badger.
Yeah.
Very cool. So, I mean, that's the swath of all the schools that, you know, those are great institutions and great football teams. Pat went to Marquette, and he's always trying to make fun of Wisconsin. So he typed in the chat that he thinks you're taking jabs at Wisconsin to see if he can get me worked up on camera, and he's going to have to do a lot better than that.
A little better.
Yeah. Go ahead, Katie.
I was going to say, David Burkhart, you are offering your services. So how about you unmute and tell us a little more so that Tunde can take advantage of your offer.
There you go.
Yeah, hi Tunde. It's been wonderful to hear your story, and I appreciate your insight. You're very articulate, and I come from a blue background. I'm familiar with Sandbox, but my question was really around: are there things we can do to help you grow and prosper? Are there, what kinds of things are you looking for? I mean, I think the regiment community does a great job of trying to help each other out as much as possible. It's one of the things I really like about the community. So in that spirit, I'd like to ask if there are things we can keep our eyes out for on your behalf, or things that we can do to help you. And that was really my question.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I'm just learning about the regiment community and what that all entails. But I think what I do a lot of is we interact pretty deeply with the Blues and think about what's strategically important to them. But we also think about, I mean, we have verticals at Sandbox in food and agriculture, in insurance technology, really in any place where that's highly regulated and we have access to a network that can help foresee trends or make decisions. That's a place that we try to be opportunistic in and to see what we can do. And so I think that the easy thing the easy sort of low-hanging fruit would be anything that's in healthcare that would be relevant to a health plan. Those are things we're going to really be able to add value to, or even things that are not like enterprise technology. Like we have a really deep network of healthcare executives that we meet with on a regular basis. And so if someone is, I know, maybe more established, but wanting to see if, is there an angle for this in healthcare? Maybe someone wants to jump in and wants a health plan as a customer. Like those are the kinds of things where I know that we could add value to those situations and help those entrepreneurs. And so if there's anything like that, I think that would be interesting to hear about.
Very cool. Great question. I'm going to connect you and David Tunde, if it's okay. He's been instrumental in the regiment community, helping us grow it. He's take him up on his words of his offer to see what we can do to help. And that gets us right to our mark as far as time goes. And I don't see any other questions in the hopper here. So I can't thank you enough for taking the time to spend with us today, Tunde. It was great to hear your story. Great to have you here in the venture community in Chicago, and we look forward to interacting with you in the future. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for coming. Yep.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Yep.
Take care.